is estimated that 65% of Aussies who died in 2020 were cremated. That's around 227 tonnes of cremated remains in 2020 Australia alone. The majority of these will be kept in an urn at home, scattered on private property, buried at a cemetery, or placed in a columbarium. But what if your deceased loved one was a bit more funky, a bit more adventurous? What kind of send-off could you give them? Let's talk creative things to do with cremated remains. Before we get into what you can do with them, let's define what cremated remains are, because if we don't, some of these ideas may seem a bit more disturbing than what they actually are. So, cremated remains are often called ashes, probably because we as humans love to do anything to distance ourselves from what we find off-putting. We can always do another video on what cremation process is, but in a nutshell, cremated remains, or cremains, are pulverized bone fragments, and they look like coarse grey sand. There is no DNA, no organic material, so they don't present any health hazard to the living or the environment. We're good? Good. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with keeping the urn of your loved one at home or in a cemetery. These are in the majority for a good reason. But maybe you've kept Uncle Mark on the shelf for a few years now and you're deciding that it's time for him to move on. Or your loved one told you before they passed that they regret having a boring life and would like you to do something exciting with their remains. So what are your options? Let's have a look. And I'll link all examples and everything in the description below. First up, the scattering options. Scattering remains at sea. Perhaps your loved one was a boating enthusiast or loved the water. This may be ideal. Unlike burial of an actual body at sea, there's no need to get a permit for scattering cremated remains at sea. But you will need to get permission from the vessel's operator. You can't just jump on board the local ferry and dump Granny's remains overboard. There are many companies who provide this particular service, including Sundowner Boat Charters in WA and Bowbury Island Boat Charters in Queensland. Aerial ash scattering. This is scattering out of a plane or drone, depending on the company that you choose. Because of the winds up at that height, cremains are usually dispersed from an apparatus under the plane. I have a family member who can attest that throwing them out of a plane yourself will leave you with a mouthful of loved one. It's not pleasant. Should also go without saying that your aerial scattering should not be conducted over a place with many people. Keep it rural. Scattering in the Outback. The Australian Outback is a place where many people are drawn to. If this was your loved one, the company Global Gypsies may be able to help. Keep in mind that some areas require permits. Launching cremains into space. This one is going to require a lot of travel and a lot of cash. Celestis is the main company that provides this service, and it has various launch sites across the USA. You can send your loved one's remain on a one-way or return journey, depending on your budget. I won't go into the details, but if this is your kind of thing, their website will answer all your questions. Viking burial. The legends of Vikings cremating whole bodies on their ships has been proven to be untrue due to simple practicality. However, the majority of Vikings were cremated, and on rare occasions, their ships were turned into funeral pyres and burned. If you would like to send off your loved one in the Viking spirit, I have linked below some miniature Viking ships which have been created to hold remains and be set alight on water. You will need to seek permission from the council to do this, and it is strongly recommended that it is done on a still lake and not during fire season. Ocean reef. Would you like to be swimming with the fishes in the afterlife? Then this may be for you. Your cremated remains are mixed with environmentally safe concrete and placed on the seafloor and becomes a new home for sea life. Now, admittedly, I couldn't find a company here in Australia that would do this, or in the Pacific region for that matter, so your cremains are going to have to migrate elsewhere in order to do this. The two examples I have below are both in the USA. But I think it would be pretty cool if your loved one was an avid scuba diver or marine biologist. Ancient burial site. Okay, this one really caught my attention, but I am a bit odd. The Sacred Stone Company has two sites in the UK where your cremains can be placed in a niche within a recreated ancient burrow. A burrow being a handcraft stone structure covered in earth. I'm pretty sure that's my only option for staying in the UK long term. Animal feed block. Personally, I think this is a fabulous idea. You could be incorporated into fish food or a squirrel feed block. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, cremated remains are not toxic and are full of minerals that our furry and fishy friends could benefit from. Again, so far only available in the USA, unless you can come up with your own creation. But the company Return to Nature is certainly open to international clients. And you could always have a holiday over there while it's created, and then spend some time in nature while Grandma spends some time with the squirrels and other wildlife. Walking stick. Like the Viking burial idea, this isn't so much a company as a product. If your loved one loved to hike, loved the outdoors, loved nature, you get the idea, then this may be a good way to disperse them. Pour them into this walking stick, and each time it hits the ground, a little bit of Nana will be sent on her way. This would be great if there was a hiking trail she always wanted to do and never quite got to. You could take her on that trek. International trip and sprinkle as you go. Rather self-explanatory really, but cremated remains are remarkably easy to travel with. Because they aren't a biohazard in any way, and as long as you pack them properly and keep them in your carry-on luggage, you and your deceased loved one could spend a year travelling the globe, sprinkling as you go. Just take note of any local permits that you may need before sprinkling. Now onto the memorial options. Fireworks. The Ashes to Ashes company can pack your loved one's cremated remains in along with some explosives and voila, they're now a firework. You will need to get the relevant clearances from the council to set them off, but once that's done, you have a lovely flashy send-off. Diamonds. This one has become extremely popular in the past few years. Since humans are made from around 18% carbon, apparently we make for quite nice diamonds. The process takes between 3 and 9 months depending on the type of diamond that you want to be turned into. Once it has been returned to you, you're free to do with it as you like. But many people seem to take them to the jeweler to be made into a nice piece of jewellery. Personally, I would want to be put into the gaudiest, ugliest setting possible, and then put it in my will that it must be kept as a family heirloom for at least 5 generations. I don't know why, but that really tickles my funny bone. Glass. Another popular choice is to have your cremated remains put into glass and made into a memorial dome or jewellery piece, or anything made out of glass really. There's a huge range of companies out there that provide these services, so find one whose work takes your fancy and off you go. Memorial teddy bear. I think this one would be very comforting for a young child who has lost someone close to them. It's a soft teddy bear with an insert inside that holds the cremated remains. It's a very huggable, hands-on kind of memorial. There are a variety of these on Etsy and Amazon, but there are also specific companies that create these bears. Memorial tree. If you didn't know already, we humans make for excellent fertilizer. If you don't simply want to spread your loved one's cremated remains over their beloved rose bushes, which I can attest will make them bloom like never before, you can always put them in a biodegradable urn that also contains a seedling and then plant them in the garden. If your loved one was a proud gardener, then this one might be right for you. Portraits using cremains. Depending on the artist that you commission to do this, the cremains may be used fully to paint the portrait or in some way be incorporated into the portrait. Either way, you have a very personalised memento to hang on your wall, and no one but you need know how it was created. Bullets. Not sure how I feel about this one, and it is a bit ironic, but your remains can be packed into a bullet if you like. Probably unsurprisingly, the only company that I can find that does this is in Alabama, and it's called My Holy Smoke. They do take international clients, however, if this is your kind of thing, you will need to do your own research about the regulations on getting it back into Australia. Vinyl record. And Vinyl is the company you want to visit for this, and I shall quote them on their product. When the album that is life finally reaches its end, why not keep that record spinning for eternity? Press your ashes, or those of your loved ones, into a vinyl recording to be cherished for generations. Record a personal message, your last will and testament, your own soundtrack, or just the sounds of silence to hear the pops and crackles for a minimal approach. Turn into stone. This is exactly as it sounds. The cremains are made into a stone, or rather, a large pebble. What you do with it once it's returned to you is up to you and your imagination. Resin art. Many people are getting into resin art nowadays. It's very popular. New Zealand company Ashes in Art will incorporate your cremated remains into a lovely piece of resin art. I like to think that if your mum always liked to play the host at dinner parties, it would be a lovely memorial to turn her into a cheese board, and then you can include her in all future dinner parties. Tattoos using cremains. Yep, you can have your loved one's cremated remains put into tattoo ink and then into you. Cremation Inc. is the company that you want for this, and their website is full of information to answer all your questions. They will also provide you with information about how to find a tattoo artist in your area that will be open to using the ink, because not every artist will be on board with you bringing your own ink, let alone if it contains Uncle Frank. Things not on the menu yet. The internet is full of randomness that it would like you to believe, and a lot of wacky ideas for cremated remains that have circulated recently have actually been one-off art pieces created for exhibitions. For example, the 3D printed cremation urn that looked like a copy of your loved one's head, that was an art piece from the University of Cambridge. But you can still get an urn that will show the silhouette of your loved one's face from a company called The Portrait Urn, which I'll link below. Also, those pencils that were made out of cremated remains, they were by an artist named Nadine Jarvis, and they're not available for purchase or order. But hopefully they'll catch on, because it really does sound like a good idea if you're an artist or your loved one was an artist. And now for the one that you will have gawked at some point in the past few years. The vibrator that could hold your loved one's cremated remains. That was an art piece by Dutch designer Mark Stockenboom. So unfortunately, you won't be able to just go online and order it. But let's be real here, there are many sex toys out there with space inside that could be used for this purpose. So by all means, if that's your thing, go for it. Things to remember. Take your time making the right decision with what you want to do with your loved one's cremains, as it needs to be the right for you now and also in the future. Ask yourself, did my loved one express their wishes in what they wanted done with their remains? Do I want a permanent memorial place where I and other family members can visit? Do other family members want to keep some of the remains? You don't have to keep all the remains together. They can be divided up amongst different people for different purposes. The sky is the limit in regard to how you memorialize your loved one. Remember, cremated remains are harmless to the living and to the environment, and if you're a creative person, then let your mind explore all options. These are just ideas from companies that already exist. If you can come up with a better way to celebrate your loved one, then go for it. Thanks for joining Gary and I here at Taboo Education. I hope you found some new ideas here. If there's one that really takes your fancy, you can always put it in your will for your future death plan. Please subscribe, like and share, and we'll see you next time. Now go talk death.